Okay, cool, excellent. Well, thank you everybody for attending. Thank you ALI for putting this on, Yale and Lisa for hosting, and Mitch for helping out as well. And thank you for everybody for taking time out of your busy day, right, to make an effort to attend. Really excited to hear from all our different experts today, sharing their insights and strategies, and most of all, their experiences in how they've found ways to make internal communication successful, particularly in the public sector. I'm seeing in the chat at the moment, we've got a great cross section of people from all around the place. I know that we've got representation from Fed, state, local, tribal. We've got a great cross section of government employees today. Thank you everybody for contributing in the chat. As Yao mentioned, my name is Tim. I'll be setting the scene later on today on some current trends and giving an overview of what the modern workplace really looks like. We're going to be talking a lot about digital workplace collaboration and how we can leverage that to meet some of our internal communication goals. And as Yao mentioned, it's something that's very near and dear to my heart, having done a lot of consulting both internally at AvePoint and externally to our clients to the best ways to leverage knowledge management and portals and communications. But more so than that, we've got some fantastic speakers today. We know we're going to hear from Cameron from King County, who's sharing an example of crisis management with unified communications, and Dana from the Texas Department of State Health Services, who's going to share some stories about transforming all staff meetings. And we're going to close up today with an interactive panel about reaching deskless employees. And we've already heard some great stories from them along the way. I was chatting with them, chatting with the panelists before this began, and we've really got some interesting takes about people who are in office, people who are hybrid, people who are out in the field. There's a lot of different angles and strategies out there that we can take. So as we embark on the next few days, I really encourage everyone to fully engage with the sessions. Share your thoughts where appropriate. Feel free to drop a message in the chat. Yale and Lisa and Mitch will be moderating so they can help pick up questions and highlight them. I'll try and keep an eye on it and multitask as best I can as well. But by all means, we'll have opportunities to come off mute, raise your hand and let us know your thoughts. And we really want to make this a collaborative experience, right? Our goal here is collectively to build a stronger, more connected agencies that not only are excelling in meeting our missions, but also creating a thriving and supportive environment for our employees as well, and making sure they're getting the information that they need. So let's make this event exciting and valuable experience for everyone. Yeah, Lisa, any other housekeeping items before we get started, or any thoughts from anyone?
No thoughts or housekeeping items over here, Tim. You go ahead, go right on ahead.
All set. Thanks.
Fantastic. All right, to kick things off today, we're going to talk a little bit about, setting the stage for the rest of the conversation this week and giving a broad, high-level overview of the state of digital workplaces today, the state of internal communications today in the context of the digital employee experience, and also talking about collaborative tools like Microsoft 365, of which we've got a couple of speakers later over the next couple of days who will dive a bit deeper into specific use cases on that. So we'll be talking about digital workplace to begin with. We're all about improving employee communications in the digital workplace that's rapidly evolving. So let's check in on what that evolution's looking like today in the public sector, and specifically some of the challenges and opportunities that are faced. And I'd love to hear from you guys as we get to that as well. We'll then take that and show some art of the possible with showing how a modern workplace that embraces a holistic collaborative platform like Microsoft 365 can leverage that integratedness and platformness for a holistic built-in employee experience that's native to the platform as opposed to bolt-on tools. And we can look at how that elevates engagement and growth strategies. Now, we'll then take a bit of a turn and talk a bit more about how as we put more and more stock into online working and our data's getting online, how the knowledge management side of that becomes more important, not just for the employee experience, but also how it impacts generative AI. And we'll definitely be hearing more about co-pilots and generative AI as the days progress. And we'll pull that all together to close up, and that will really set the stage for the rest of the discussions and examples that we have throughout the day. We can chat in the chat. We have a Slido poll as well. We can also come off mute. Those of you who are familiar with Slido, you can get ready now. Otherwise, we have a QR code you can scan a little bit later. So get the scanners ready and get ready to come off mute as we come along. Quick bit of background on AvePoint before we get started. For those who are not familiar with us, we're a software provider who creates solutions that enhance and extend your Microsoft 365 investment. That's why we always talk about M365 as our base example. Been around for over 20 years now, starting out with SharePoint and then moving up to the cloud. Global company headquartered in Jersey City, but we actually have a specialized dedicated public sector subsidiary office just down the road from me in Courthouse, Virginia, Courthouse Arlington. Many of you might know us for our SharePoint backup and restore and some of our SharePoint-based solutions, but we actually have a full cloud platform that plugs into M365, FedRAMP ready, ISO certified, and it enhances you with additional security and resilience controls. So in short, our mission as a company is to help you collaborate with confidence, right? So as you're working on your online platforms, we want to make sure that you've got a robust data foundation where your content in M365 is secure, controlled, compliant, and protected, giving you confidence in your data and confidence in the results that come out of your data, which will be a key point that we talk about when we talk about Copilot a little bit later today. But first, let's start with the digital workplace, right? And by that, we mean all of the digital tools and services that we're using to communicate, collaborate, and generally be productive, right? And this could be things like, this doesn't have to be M365. This could be things like Slack or Zoom or whatever you're using. It could be any digital tool that you or your team or your agency uses as part of your daily workflows. So let's start with something a little interactive. And this is not just for the benefit of my session. This is for the benefit of everyone over the next few days. Let's get an understanding of where we are today with our digital working environment. You know, how are you feeling about it? What are some challenges or opportunity? You can scan the Slido and it will come up as a word cloud. That'd be the preferred way. You can also drop in the chat or come off mute. You know, what are some things that are top of mind that you're looking to get out of the discussions in this conference over the next few days? I see some people typing in the Slido. Good, good, good. And you can keep that session open and refresh. And when we get to a question later, it will refresh itself. Engagement, transparency. Okay, these are big ones. Reaching on-site workers who don't have computers. Okay, so how do we get, how do we reach our hybrid and remote employees without computers? That's a big one as well. I know one of our panel sessions, we're going to dive into that a little bit more too, but yeah, that's a very interesting topic. Resistance, digital fatigue, that's a big one. Different tech, strategic planning, silos. Yep, that's a big problem. Okay, good. Well, I appreciate everybody who's contributing. So standardized messaging across agencies. We're going to dive into some of these over the next little while. So engagement's obviously top of mind for everyone, but definitely when it comes to things like fatigue, silos, different tech, that's something we'll be addressing as well. So you know, I took a quick straw poll online before doing this, and I can see we've got some similar things here that are top of mind, such as adapting to hybrid environments, digital fatigue. So, you know, I can see that these are things that are definitely top of mind. And how do we, you know, it's not just digital fatigue, it's communications and messaging fatigue. You know, we're trying to get the right message to the right person at the right time, trying to make sure that we're communicating in a timely manner that's going to be effective and valuable for your agency or organization. But generally, you know, there's a lot out there at the moment. Not listed here include things like, you know, we've got mobile first challenges, especially with remote workers who don't have a computer, data-driven decision making, accessibility, change management, modernizing legacy systems. I've got up here cybersecurity, obviously personalization AI. There's a lot that's going on at the moment. So, you know, I'm really looking forward to hearing how, you know, these sorts of themes resonate over the next round of speakers and through our panels as we discuss these kinds of issues, but keeping engagement top of mind. So that's the digital workplace. Let's talk a little bit about the employee experience and how we see it shifting. And this is from Microsoft has a work trend index report where they look at, they do a big study across all of their customers who are using digital workplaces, and they're trying to understand how the employee experience is impacting them. And over the past few years, you know, we've seen that change a lot, right? The great reshuffle, quiet quitting. Nowadays, they're calling the era of great expectations, right? Where employees are not just concerned with how and where they work, but also why they're working. You know, what's my purpose? Certainly, I've seen that in my own team as well, right? With some of the people who report to me, they're certainly very much more motivated by, you know, what is their purpose, what is their job, more so than salary or some of the other benefits, which may or may not be a given. So some of the things that we're seeing here, you know, it's not just about a paycheck, it's about prioritizing things like flexibility, autonomy, human connection, and meaning in the work. And some of the stats that we're seeing here is that a majority of employees are motivated to come back to the office more so by the promise of socializing with coworkers, you know, and reestablishing that human connection and getting those really having the people moments. We're definitely seeing, we saw one of the key themes on the other slide was transparency. A majority of employees think that their company doesn't solicit enough feedback, right? They don't have good visibility into what's coming down the pipe. They don't feel like they have good transparent communication channels to their leadership, and they don't feel like their leadership asks their opinion enough. So more of that two-way communication. We also see that organizations are needing to re-recruit their employees with the right growth opportunities. Okay, a majority said they'd stay at a company longer or stay with an agency or organization longer if they received a clear goals, clear path, and learning and development support. Right? On top of that, we have all of the regular macroeconomic challenges around workforce disruption and inflation, supply chain, all that, all the kind of stuff that compounds these employee experiences. But definitely, this is a moment where we can reflect on how we are building culture in our organization, especially in the role of hybrid and remote work, how we're measuring employee well-being, and how we're ensuring that employees' day-to-day work is aligned with strategic priorities. And we'll uncover more of that as we go along. But big piece of feedback, it's often seen as very difficult to do. There was a mention there about swapping systems and having data silos. Again, very common problem. There is a proliferation of tech. We see that a not insignificant number of organizations have 6 or more tools just for the employee experience, right? So maybe one tool for managing goals, one tool for managing performance, one tool for managing feedback. That's a lot. Right. And it's a lot, not just for organizations and our team to manage that, but it's a lot for our employees to know where to go and to find everything. Also, many of the tools are outdated or irrelevant, according to employee feedback. And I think it's no surprise that a majority of business leaders wish that they had one platform to do everything. And that's where we'll get into our platform conversation a little bit later today and show you one potential way of doing it. You may be wondering why Microsoft cares to invest in this. Well, the good news is that research shows that when companies are investing in their people and focusing on improving the employee experience, that obviously directs the core employee outcomes such as engagement, well-being, and satisfaction, which directly correlates to productivity, profitability, and all the other good stuff. I think with this audience, that goes without saying. I think everybody in this audience understands the value that they bring, but sometimes we need to re-communicate that to our leadership. But definitely, one of the things that Microsoft saw post, well, I was trying to go this whole presentation without saying the COVID word, but one of the things they saw during that instance was that there was high degrees of burnout, high degrees of fatigue, and high degrees of disengagement when everybody shifted to fully online. So Microsoft realized, hey, if we want people using our software and being effective in the digital workplace of the future, we need to seriously address the employee experience to make sure that we are supporting and enabling that and not becoming a detractor of that. So to that end, let's talk a little bit about how we at AvePoint define what a modern and effective employee experience is and how this aligns to what Microsoft has in the Viva Suite. And there's a lot of different approaches to what that is, but this is the way that we like to look at it. So when we're considering what makes an effective digital employee experience, there's 4 main pillars that we like to rally behind, and that's connection and communication. So how can we make it easier for staff to do their job, find relevant information that's important to them and useful for them to get their work going, but also how do they uncover other people? Right? We talked about the social connections and the importance of that. And when you're not all sitting in a cubicle, sitting in an office together, or even if you are sitting in a big office block and people are all around the place, how can you discover other people and get connected to other people who may be experts and can help you out or cross-pollinate or answer your question? So the traditional internal comms applications of sharing news, sharing events, and emphasizing your mission and your culture are all still important, but also making it easier for staff to find information, find that news, and consume it to not only do their job, but also embrace the culture of your organization that you're trying to build. Another important pillar is purpose and alignment. So we mentioned this lines up nicely with the Microsoft Work Report Index, but how can we make it easier for staff to know and track both what their goals are, but also more importantly, how their work is impacting the organization? How can we make that visible? How can we make that easy? Understanding, of course, engagement and insights. So tracking sentiment, having channels to provide feedback, and understanding the well-being of your employees is critical for having an effective employee experience. There's no point putting lots of stuff out there and having no idea if it's useful or not, or no idea if it's having a positive or worse, a negative impact. And facilitating growth, right? So providing opportunities for learning and coaching, improving onboarding, and that kind of growth opportunities. So out of curiosity, let's just spend a quick moment to share which focus areas have been a top priority for this audience, right? If we're talking about, so obviously engagement is up there, that was on the previous slide. But if we think about these pillars here and we're thinking about what would make a great employee experience, is there something particularly that jumps out to you other than it sounds like engagement is a big one from what we were seeing before. So I wonder if anyone has any particular examples of why engagement is top of mind at the moment. Feel free to come off mute or drop it in the chat. Seeing a bit more for connections and communication. Employee connections is certainly important. Okay. Nobody wants to come off mute? Alrighty. Okay, so this is good. And again, this is good context for the overall, as we go through the next few days sessions in terms of what is important. Okay. So they're all pretty important, but focusing more on the connections and communication. All right, so let's dive into that a little bit deeper. So as we mentioned before, these are all pillars of what make a great employee experience platform and pulling together a holistic employee experience. But the key to getting this right is starting with the collaborative core, right? If we think about the way to have a good digital employee experience starts with the tools that we use every day that builds out our digital fabric, and then having the employee experience, surrounding that throughout all levels and not just being a bolt-on on the side. So I know many of you are familiar with Microsoft Teams and Outlook, so I won't spend too long on it, but just to set the scene and make sure we're all on the same page, I do want to give a background by what we mean when we say Microsoft 365 and Viva and Copilot and some of these technical terms. Again, I'll drill this down into employee experience specific examples in just a moment, and we've got some great speakers over the next couple of days going deeper into some of these topics. But I just for the sake of everyone, I do want to break it down. So starting with collaboration, right? So if Microsoft 365 is a suite of tools, has collaboration, productivity, low code, no code customizations, which I'll show you in a second. But Microsoft Teams is the one that we're all familiar with, and that is the default for where most people do their work and remote and hybrid work today, with over 250 million people using Teams every day. And what makes Teams unique compared to something like Zoom or Slack or some other things, it brings together multiple collaboration items into one panel. So you may just be using it without realizing this, but you've got a chat app, you've got a meetings app like Zoom, you've got a calling app like Skype, you can collaborate together with co-work, you can plug in additional extensions. It's a very, very extensible integrated working platform, right? So it's not just where people attend a meeting and turn it off at the end. It's persistent as you're chatting, as you're working, as you're collaborating with your colleagues. The threads of that work are continually flowing through the different areas of Teams. Okay, so it's where you can share ideas, automate your processes, create human connections, and it also works as a hub, bringing everything else in. And you'll see how we do this with Viva in just a little bit. Then, of course, there's the Microsoft Office suite. That's a core part of Microsoft 365. You've got your Word, Excel, Outlook, I'm sure stuff that we're all familiar with on this call. There's a lot of other productivity tools actually in M365, like lists, planner, tasks. There's a whole bunch of stuff in there that's definitely worth checking out. But again, the key part here is it's all on the same platform, right? Even though it feels like separate apps, it's actually all connected in terms of experiences and understanding. Then to take it to the next level, Microsoft realized a gap where they built this entire platform. People can spend all their working day, but then how can we extend that, right? And how can we extend it without being developers? So that's where we've got the low code, what they call a low code, no code, citizen developer configuration tools for creating workflows, forms, your own intelligence dashboards, quickly set up your own chatbots or virtual agents, quickly set up web pages. So Power Platform is a great part of M365 that lets you really customize it to your business. But then, when we think about well-being, right, we think about all these different apps and features. We've got chatting and collaboration in Teams. We've got all that knowledge that's floating around inside Microsoft Office. We've got customizations and automations that we're building in Power Platform. Microsoft realized, how are we going to promote well-being? How are we going to give leadership insights into how people are working or where people are working? You can't just stand up and look over the cubicle anymore. If you've got field workers, remote workers, hybrid workers, some days people in the office, some days not. And that brings us to Microsoft Viva, right? So this is Microsoft's answer to creating a full employee experience that's built on top of the collaborative and productivity backbone of the platform. So it's where your employees are working every day. It's where your users are working every day. And we can get immediate, not only touch points to them, but also insights into how they're working and how they're collaborating with each other. And most recently, and this has been top of mind for everyone, is this has all been underpinned now by co-pilots in Microsoft, where we're able to leverage generative AI to provide helpers across the platform. And yes, that's plural on the co-pilots. There's more than one. In fact, I don't know what the running total is. If anyone knows what the exact number is, you can get a cookie. But I think it's upwards of 250 now. The last I heard. But there's lots of these generative AI plugins and helpers that add-ons throughout the platform that use your data, use the information that's in your environment to synthesize that and provide relevant and accurate, helpful information to your users as well, which again improves the employee experience. I think it's no secret that something like search or finding other users or getting good recommendations has been an integral part of the employee experience for as long as we've had intranets and digital tools. And co-pilots just really take that to the next level. 119, thanks, Stephen. All right, so 250 was a bit high, but all right, 119 is good. So yes, there's a lot, and we'll see a couple today. Stephen's going to get more into that a little bit later, as we'll see as we go along. All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about Microsoft Viva and then how this helps the employee experience to give you a bit of art of the possible of what we can do. Daniel will actually go deeper into this on day 3, which I think will be a fantastic session, and you can see a little bit more about that. But we'll go a bit horizontal and wide on this to give you an overview. So Viva brings together the tools employees need to be successful in today's world of work into one unified solution that enables the connection, insights, purpose, and growth that we talked about from the other slide. They've got product experiences centered around connection that help keep everyone informed and inspired and connected. You can look into productivity statistics with Viva Insights and understand productivity and well-being, and also get intelligent, actionable insights out of them. You can align work to goals and from organization top down and bottom up, which I'll show you in a second as well, and also help employees learn, grow, and succeed. So what we'll do is we'll talk a little bit about the platform. I'll go through it. I'll go through all the tools that are available, and I'll focus a lot on the connection as well, since that was something that we highlighted in the previous slide. So when it comes to connections, Viva Connections is the suite of add-ons from Microsoft that say, hey, people are working in your digital environment. How can we promote a vibrant and inclusive workplace culture and help people discover relevant, personalized information, news, and do this through the apps they use every day, right? Those of us in the corporate learning world would know Bob Mosh's 5 moments of need, trying to meet the employees where they are at the time they need. And this is a tool that helps them do that from the communications and engagement angle. So how do we connect and engage with frontline workers? How do we facilitate two-way dialogues between leadership? And then how do we get some of the benefits that come out of that, right? So let's have a look. First of all is Viva Home, previously known as Viva Connections, right? So this is a plugin to Teams. It's available right in Teams. It's also got its own app that you can access. It's also in the desktop. Think of this like a replacement to your intranet. Right, so this would take something like a landing page or an intranet or the front door to your employee experiences, access to news, resources, and information. So when a user is coming to the intranet or coming to a location to look for material around the employee experience, this would be a central launching point that you can promote as a central place for employees to go to. It comes with targeted news, targeted links. You can run campaigns on it, which I'll show you in a second. And it's a way to access all of your vital workplace applications. So again, trying to reduce that crossing between different borders and giving those links right there for the critical applications that people need to use. In this example here, you can see I've logged into it in my work and it says it's personalized, good afternoon, Timothy, and it's starting to recommend things to me like, hey, browse some learning opportunities, catch up on some organizational news. And help um, push some of the things that my organization is promoting, such as, hey, take charge of your career and follow these courses. So by taking some of the other material, both on Viva Learning, which we'll show you in a second, but also your own corporate learning, corporate news, and being able to promote that to end users. The great part is that it's all personalized into audiences, right? One of the things that you can do, so you can brand this with your organizational name and icon to make it familiar, make it seem like a trusted source of information. This is all no code, right? It's all configuration out of the box. But the advantage of this is, I speak to a lot of organizations and agencies that have, various intranets throughout the organization. Right? They might have one on a separate system somewhere else, and it's really hard to track how are people engaging with it because it's disconnected from everything. You might find policies and procedures somewhere else and learning information in another system. What Microsoft's trying to do here with Viva Connections is really smooth out that employee experience and bring it all together. Right, so it's also personalized using AI to deliver feeds of relevant content and resources. And like we mentioned, you can audience target this so that different areas of your organization have different news or announcements or information links promoted to them. And this can also be integrated with things like Workday and ServiceNow. So again, Microsoft's goal here is really they're trying to take some of the disjointed multi-silo employee experiences that are out there and pull it all together into one unified system, and making that available for our mobile employees as well with a mobile app. Another fantastic tool in the Viva suite that some of you may be already familiar with is Viva Engage, which of course is Yammer rebranded for those of us who've used Yammer before. Can we get a show of hands? Are people familiar with Yammer? Do you use it already? Okay, we've got one. We've got some shaking heads. We've got some raising hands. Okay, so Yammer is almost like a digital public forum. It's useful for all company engagement or community engagement. Okay, I see some thumbs up out there. This is different to Teams. It's one of the questions we often get asked. How is this different to Teams? Teams is more your private collaborative chat within your project or your department or your group, whereas this is more like posting for everybody, right? It's not necessarily private. You can create a post for the whole company, create a post for a whole department. It's a way to just foster digital community building. Think about like an internal Reddit, right? So it is one of the best ways to think about it. It's not necessarily for collaborating on a document, but more for communication, sharing, asking questions and engagement, and doing this at scale. And again, built right into Teams. So if you think about where your employees are working every day, they're not having to leave to go to a different app or leave to go to a different website to engage with their fellow employees. They'll get news, announcements, and updates from Yammer right within Teams where they're already working. Again, smoothing over that employee experience. We are heavy users of Yammer here at AvePoint. You can see we had the CrowdStrike outage last week, and immediately there was a notification popped on there, and you can see 1,400 people saw it pretty much straight out the gate. And then we also, being a disaster recovery company as well, we also talked a little bit about that and how preparing for stuff like CrowdStrike is important. But you'll also notice that you can set up different communities on the left. We've got different kinds of focus groups, interest groups that really focus those conversations. And you can do this by, horizontal. You can have like communities of practice for maybe your engineering or your surveying groups that all want to get together from the different departments and chat about stuff. Or maybe you want to do vertical as well. Like you've got just the IT team or just the finance team or just the HR team want to have a space to collaborate. But either way, this is a way to help connect employees to each other and give employees a space that's not on Facebook, not an external system, but give them an area that's safe to chat and communicate with each other. One of the things that we recommend is we do recommend creating some fun places as well, some employee interest groups, maybe some pet channels. We have a band or a live music group here at AvePoint where people share their recordings and share stuff out. And this is, again, a great way to meet other colleagues and get people engaged with each other. So it doesn't just have to be around specific corporate interests, but you can use that as a gateway to get to that. And similarly, one of the challenges that was raised at the beginning of the Slido was about transparency, right? And leadership visibility. So one of the new things that Viva Engage rolled out recently is something called Leadership Corner, which is a space for employees to interact directly with their leadership. Okay, so the leaders are promoted on here to be able to share ideas and perspectives, but more so, the employees are able to share their ideas and perspective, participate in organization and initiatives. You know, this is a great way to create authentic connections. There's a whole bunch of tools available in here that are like, if you think like social media, you've got video clips, you can have Ask Me Anythings, you can run sentiment analysis on this to see how people are feeling about it. And not only does this give leaders a modern way to reach a broader reach of people in your audience and build their brand, but it also fosters two-way dialogue, right? It helps guide and create clarity on what the organization's thinking, what your leaderships are thinking, and helps create unity and help shape that company culture. And like we said, it's a two-way street, right? It also lets leaders understand what's working and maybe what's not working so well. So this is a fantastic new feature of Viva that we're using as well. Another great aspect of when we talk about connections and communications is Viva Amplify. So this is a campaign management tool that lets you target specific groups of employees. So when we think about our role as internal communicators, we're often writing messages and figuring out how to get it in front of the right people. You know, are these people out in the field on email? Are these people sitting at their desk on Teams all day? Do we know people engage on Yammer more? So the goal of Amplify is to help automate that, right? Make our job more effective, make our communications more effective. So this is a social collaboration platform that lets you, it helps you craft a message. So there are co-pilots and AI built into this that help you write out and draft out your message. And then you can choose your distribution channels and your audiences intelligently, right? So it gives you writing guidance about improved messaging resonance, provides metrics for improvement. Now you can write the message once and distribute it across multiple channels instead of having to post in multiple places, and lets you visualize and optimize how your messages are going with a preview of your final output. And just like in marketing, you'll actually have the ability to understand and track the impact of your messages. And I saw a question from Emily. He had a question, is this something that integrates with SharePoint or replaces it? I would call it an integration. It doesn't replace SharePoint. SharePoint is a collaborative sort of document file management collaborative tool. This is more of a communications tool. So you'll write something in here, it will post out to various messages. And yes, it does get delivered to Teams as well, Irina. I can see your comment there. So, you know, again, these are features that Microsoft's adding to their employee experience stack to make it easier for communicators to get the message out there. Cool. Love seeing the comments roll up, by the way, and the questions. It's fantastic. Yeah, don't hold back. Talking more about co-pilots, you know, this is an example of a new co-pilot that's been added to Viva Engage. So what they've done is, if you think right now, those of us who are familiar with ChatGPT, I'm sure we all are in some capacity, right? Previously, you might have gone to ChatGPT and said, hey, I need to draft a message for my company, and I want you to read this document, and I'm going to copy and paste some company information in, and give me a summary of this that I can promote back, and all that kind of stuff. Not only is it time consuming to jump between those different systems, but you're also potentially putting company information out in the wild, right? With ChatGPT, not necessarily something you want to do. So what Microsoft is doing, Microsoft M365 uses the OpenAI engine the same way. So I don't want to steal Stephen's thunder too much in his GCC Copilot session a little bit later, but you know, even though not everybody has access to copilots just yet, I can guarantee you Azure OpenAI is in the government today. It's in the GCC. Not necessarily everywhere, but it is there. And there are a lot of government organizations who are already building ChatGPT-like apps or Copilot-like apps. They're just doing it with the engine already, even though it's not necessarily the Copilot you see here, but it's coming. Okay, and Stephen will go more into that later. But essentially what you're seeing here is these generative AI helpers are getting plugged directly into the app. So as you're writing a post on Viva Engage, like, oh, I want to ask a question or I want to announce something on Viva Engage, it will actually give you recommendations along the way. You can see here it's saying, hey, keep it authentic, and you know, here are some tips for how you can change the voice for a better reach. Similarly, it plugs in with recommendations. So, hey, we noticed you logged into Viva Engage, you logged into Yammer. Maybe you want to promote yourself or promote a project you're working on or promote an initiative you're working on. Here are some recommendations of things you should post. So using that generative AI, using that machine learning, but keeping it internal to your org, not going out to another window and going out to ChatGPT, are some of the tools that they're using to make life easier in this space. All right, so let's talk a little bit about engagements and insights. So one of the things that Viva is able to do, the employee experience platform, and this is really the advantage of having all of these tools on the same platform, right? I'm not going out to a separate intranet. I'm not going out to a separate forum tool. I'm not going out to a separate app to do my work. It's all connected in Microsoft on the Microsoft 365 platform, which means they get some amazing statistics about engagement and reach and how people are working with the platform. And they're able to give us some really good insights. Even if you're a desk worker sitting at your desk using Teams, or you're remote or hybrid out using the Microsoft stack, it doesn't matter where you are, they can start giving you personalized insights and nudges both on your own personal productivity. I don't know if you guys have ever received that. If for those who are working in M365, have you ever received that email, like a daily briefing, which I'll show you in a second, that tells you how many minutes you've spent in meetings, how many times you've double booked yourself, and so on. And it helps you as an individual be more productive and be more happy and look after your well-being. But it also works from the personal level to the manager of a team level, all the way to the organization level, to really get a good understanding about the impacts of how and where people are working. Right, and it does this with different levels of insights and enhanced analytics, and it uses data science and people science to back that up as well. So let me give you a couple of examples. Viva Insights as a personal, I can just log onto it and get an access to a dashboard that'll give me similar information to that daily briefing recap email, right? It'll make suggestions like, hey, Tim, you've been working on documents a lot of times out of hours lately. We notice you're working on a lot of documents at 9 o'clock at night. Maybe you want to restructure your day. Or it might make recommendations like, hey, you've got a lot of back-to-back meetings coming up. Maybe you want to schedule some focus time or some recharge time in between. So this is some of the ways that Microsoft's using its intelligence, using its analytics and the power of its platform to explore ways for better work habits and improve well-being and actionable recommendations as well. The next level up, so as a team lead, if you're a manager of a team, you can now get insights into how your team's doing as well, including things like recommendations on how long you're spending in one-on-one time, right? So you can see whether employees are engaging with you or not, or whether you've forgotten to schedule some certain things. You can build personal habits like no meeting days, like no meeting Fridays, and use that to get visibility and understanding of how you and your team are working. And again, the next level up as well. So at an organization level, being able to get insights saying, hey, these managers aren't spending any one-on-one time with their team. Maybe that's something we need to address, either with training or with a review. You can get visibility into things like burnout, or how many people are collaborating outside of business hours. How many of your team are actually having meetings outside of their business hours, right? And again, the goal here is about promoting well-being, engagement, and effectiveness, and avoiding burnout and avoiding, flight risk. So I mentioned before, this was a big topic for us when we all came back from remote work and we started coming back hybrid. We found that while our productivity was great, while everybody was remote, we did have challenges with burnout from people being online too much, but we also had engagement and connectivity challenges with our new employees who were hired as fully remote. They didn't build those social connections, and we're able to get some insights out of this dashboard in terms of who's getting neglected and who isn't being and who perhaps isn't connecting as well as they should, and be able to target and outreach them with some personalized communications and some bit of extra attention out of HR to make sure we're reducing that flight risk. So these kinds of insights and statistics are fantastic, but what enables that is we're fully working on Microsoft Teams throughout our org, right? So if that's not the case for you, that's fine, but think about how we're going to pull stats from those other systems to get that holistic view. This is an example of the daily briefing email that I mentioned. So many of you will be familiar with this already, but if you haven't, again, it's a daily summary that Microsoft sends to you that gives you recommendations on your focus time and how many hours you're spending. And hey Tim, we noticed you attended 10 meetings, but you didn't actually click accept on any of them. Maybe you want to let the meeting organizer know that you're actually attending their meetings so they can better do their time. But one of the cool updates that they've made recently, for those of you who haven't seen it yet, is that you can now action these things directly from the email itself. Again, reducing the clicks for employees and improving their employee experience and their working experience in the digital workplace. Yeah. Moving things along, we've got things like Viva Pulse. So one of the things we talked about was feedback and transparency and being able to solicit information from your team. So Viva's got a couple of tools that way to do this. So they've got Pulse, which is a survey tool. It's an anonymous survey tool that team leaders can use to request regular confidential feedback from their team, periodically, right? So one of the examples might be you're on a project, you want to take a pulse of how well that project's doing. So you just want to send a quick survey to the project team with some questions to get a feeling on how people are doing or how the project is doing. One of the great things is this comes with a library of a question library, which have research-backed templates to be asking the question in the right way. So you're going to get the best results, and that you're not asking a vague question where it's going to muddy the waters. But in the example here, setting up a well-being burnout pulse during a busy time in a project and sending it out to the team and being able to, as a manager, just click those out, send it to people in teams, engage with them in teams and get that feedback so they're not going off to a different system. Similarly, there's another solution in Viva called Glint, but this is an organizational-wide surveying tool when you really want to put your finger on the pulse on the entire organization, but more importantly, also take action. So one of the unique features of Glint is it's a full organization-wide anonymous survey tool. Some of you might be familiar with it before. Microsoft bought it and included it in their suite, actually. But again, it pings and reminds people in teams. It follows up with reminders in teams. It gives you engagement statistics. But what's more, it has real-time data science behind it and people science to give you actionable recommendations on how to create better employee experiences. In addition to that, this is also one of the things that we help with at AvePoint. So we build upon the underlying graph fabric that Microsoft has to bring you even more actions and insights. And I won't spend too long on this, but we do have over 60 different templates that you can use with or without Viva Insights. You can plug this in at any point in time and integrate it with other systems as well to get dashboards into how communications are going, which teams and departments are collaborating with each other, where high potential adoption is. So if you've got someone who's using a tool really well and or they're showing signs of using a few of the tools really well and you think they'll benefit from some additional training to be a real high promoter, these are some of the dashboards that we can help bring out. Similarly, for communicators, we can help you with leveraging keyword analysis and benchmarking to help provide needle-moving conversations throughout the organization. And again, building this on top of what Microsoft offers. So we have our own data warehouse and analytics that will actually pass through this and provide you with communications and adoptions-focused dashboards. But we can go into more of that a little bit later. Okay. Just before I close up on this, we also have on Copilot for Microsoft 365 as well. So if you are thinking of rolling that out or you're rolling out a pilot and you want to see where the licenses are being effectively used or where employees are engaging with it, where they're finding benefit, maybe Copilot for Word versus Teams chat, and how the adoption's tracking, we have custom dashboards around that as well. I just saw a question in the chat. 5, no, please let me know. Yep. Okay, cool. Thanks for picking that one up, Daniel. Appreciate that. Purpose. Okay, so again, the next experience is purpose. We mentioned at the beginning, employees of today are looking for a reason for the why, and Viva helps you align your people and projects to your strategic business priorities, right? So think of it like a OKR on steroids. One of the things that it will help you do is, do goal clarity and alignment at scale. So you can do from the top down or bottom up and help you deliver goal setting templates that have been curated by experts and people science that are available in the system so you're not starting from scratch. So let me give you an example from that. So alignment from the top down. So you can set top level organizational goals that roll down to individual employees. Very simple and intuitive system. Again, it has best practices and OKR templates built in to help you manage and adopt that at scale. So just to give you an idea, and it will give you tracking as well. And more so than tracking, it's actually bringing the OKRs into the flow of work, right? So if you think about where your team is doing work, I've worked in organizations in the past where we're tracking these in an Excel or maybe in a separate HR format. what Microsoft's trying to do here is infuse the OKRs and the goals into the everyday work, right? So it's not just a scorecard that gets updated once a month or once a quarter, but it's an active part of employees' daily work, right? Highlighting the purpose and the impact of what they're doing and giving the opportunity for instant check-ins and instant measurement around that. So putting the actual organization goals at the core of what the employees are doing every day. Again, not just something that they go and do once a month, but actually bringing it front and center to how they're working. Reduces the friction, helps your OKR run on autopilot, has deep integration to other tools. So you can actually integrate this with Salesforce, Dynamics, ADO, Jira, depends on what tools you're using in the organization. But what Microsoft's really trying to do here, they're not being a closed door anymore like they used to in the olden days. They really want to open up the connections and bring that information into teams where people are working, where it's useful for that holistic employee experience, right? They're trying to make it easier for you and your employees. And also, of course, because it's all centrally tracked and centrally managed, you get full visibility into the goals and the priorities from the organizational level, the team level, and the individual level. This is another great feature where Copilot's been added. So they have Copilot in Viva Goals, and that's using, again, generative AI to help create and share and summarize the org goals. So I'll just zoom in on that here so you can see that. You can do things like import goals from an existing strategy document. So you can upload a corporate PowerPoint and say, hey, how does this apply to my marketing team? How does this apply to my comms team? Help you import things from PowerPoint, Excel, and it also helps you monitor progress, right? So you can, and generate summaries. So you can ask, hey, how's my team tracking on their OKRs? Where can I look for? All of the sort of conversational benefits that you'd get with something like a chat GPT, but now you can apply it in a goals scenario. So again, this is just one of the, what was it, Stephen, 119? It's one of the 119 areas that Microsoft's adding AI into their platform to help with some of these day-to-day tasks. And finally, growth. And I can move through this a little bit quicker because it didn't come up as highly on the screen. But obviously, with Viva, they're trying to bring learning and development and learning objectives into teams as well. Just like all the other employee experience pillars, how can we make it easy for our staff to find and access different information and retain our talent and help them learn on the job and make it easier, right? And these things like, personalized learning experiences, personalized recommendations using AI, again, based on your data, right? So as you're working with documents, as you're working with other information in M365, it knows, oh, I know Tim's in marketing and I know Tim's working on standard operating procedures. I'm going to recommend the following information to him. So this is where your data quality and using the data in your system is super important for these recommendations. But also integrations with things like LinkedIn Learning, formerly lynda.com, which I'll show you in a second. But is anyone out there using Viva Learning at the moment? Have you tried it already? Is there a thumbs up or thumbs down? Get a couple nods, couple of nods, couple of shakes. All right. So just very quickly, the goal of Viva Learning, like everything else that I'm showing here, is bringing the learning experience into teams. And a very important distinction here that I get asked all the time, is it an LMS? No. Okay. Viva Learning is not an LMS. It's not designed to be an LMS, but it is designed to be a learning hub, which can either integrate with your current LMS to bring learning content into teams and recommend it on the Viva homepage, like you saw earlier on our intranet. Kyle, I see you've got a thumbs down. I don't know if it's because I'm talking about LMSs or you disagree with what I'm saying. It can either integrate with your LMSs, or you can use your own content as well, right? You can upload your own organizational content. It supports SCORM and other kinds of content that you can load in, and you can create your own courses. Again, the goal here is how are we making it easy for employees to access this content through various channels, through Teams, through the homepage, through Viva Connections, through chat, through recommendations, making it easy to get to where I need to be. So they integrate with multiple third-party providers out of the box. And what you're seeing here in this screenshot is how you can bring some of that learning content into a team. So maybe I've got an HR team, or I've got a finance team, and I want to recommend some finance-related training, and I can link that in the tab up the top there. So as we're working, it's very easy to get to. You can also do it through one-to-one chats, group chats, or meetings. So maybe as a manager, I might say, hey, Lisa, I think it'd be really beneficial if you take on this course, and I can link it on there, right, straight away into the chat. Well, my MacBook is not great for Zoom. Got it. Thanks, Kyle. It's also got LinkedIn Learning Hub integration. So if your organization does have a LinkedIn Learning license, so you've got access to all of the LinkedIn Learning content. Obviously, Microsoft owns LinkedIn. They can bring all of that content seamlessly into Teams, and you can track and get visibility right within the same tools that you're already using. This will include syncing content and learner records across systems, leveraging your same login, all of the same benefits. So again, we're trying to get to the point where an employee can just seamlessly access everything they need to do day to day from the one hub. They're not going to a separate browser, using a separate login, all that kind of stuff. How do we make it as frictionless as possible to access things that improve their employee experience? This is a great feature as well. So using AI to connect and manage the organizational knowledge and understand what knowledge in your organization is out there and what's important, and then recommend learning around that. And then finally, some of the newer features include a new feature is Viva Answers, which is using AI and natural language processing to actually match questions and answers across the organization, almost like a Quora, right? So almost like a Quora within your organization, you can ask a question. It will help bring in experts and make recommendations and help you find information, again, in trying to improve the learning and growth opportunities across the org. Another thing that we do, so just a quick sidebar, another thing we do at AvePoint, one of the things that we do is we integrate with Viva Learning and we integrate with Teams to flip it the other way around. So whereas Viva Learning is about taking learning and bringing it into Teams, we take the other method where we actually have an LMS that's fully integrated the other way around, where you can build out a learning path and a learning course and push it into teams, into multiple teams. So in this case, when we do our manager training, we have multiple cohorts across different departments or different regions in this case. And what it enables us to do is our learning and development coordinators, they can set one lesson plan with multiple lessons. They can set different audiences and different speakers for the different audiences, and then it will actually, and the content for that learning path as well, and then it will actually push that out to multiple teams. So your cohort of learners can actually get together in a team, access the material in Viva Learning, get a schedule and automated meeting invites on the different speakers that are coming. This is a great way. If you're doing a lot of in-person, both hybrid and in-person blended learning sessions, this is a great tool to help with that. And again, fully integrated so you can access everything from right within Teams. So just closing the chapter of this talk on Viva before we get to the last 10, 15 minutes of this presentation. This is a throwback to the other slide about why invest in the employee experience. I think with this audience, we all know what the benefits of having a good employee experience is. But there's two key values that we just saw that I want to highlight in particular. I mean, we all know why the employee experience is valuable, but specifically, having the employee experience integrated and holistic, right? So there's two key things: the integrated platform, whether you're posting in communication or having it recommended, or posting learning and development, employees finding it easily, or creating and tracking and monitoring goals. What we just saw was there's real power to looking at how your connected digital landscape looks, right? Reducing those silos, reducing those barriers to entry, reducing the friction. So for the employee, I find stuff easier and the system can recommend stuff to me as well. But also you get those insights, right? Because everything's in the one system, everything's integrated, everything's tracked. You can get some really rich analytics and understanding of how and where your employees are working, what's working for them and what's not working for them. So the integrated platform is one big takeaway I want from this. So even if you're not using everything in Teams today, and definitely that's a consideration because the things are there, you just need to switch them on, right? Even if you're not doing that today, do consider about the tools that you are using, how you can integrate them and what opportunities you could unlock by making things easier for the employee and better for the insights. The second key takeaway that I wanted to talk about this is the integrated content. So if we look at the power of personalization for the user, the power of personalized recommendations, the generative AI suggestions, this all relies on the data and collaboration happening in the platform, right? If you've got a tool which has siloed off in a vacuum somewhere else, that's only useful when an employee goes over there and logs into it, right? So taking full advantage of the platform approach, obviously we like Microsoft 365, but taking full advantage of that platform approach leverages the content that's available in the platform for those generative AI tools, for those personalized recommendations. Which brings me to the knowledge management implications, right? So let's talk a little bit about where KM fits in this picture. And again, Stephen's going to go more into GCC specific items about AI in his session, but like we said, GenAI is here now. These recommendations and analytics are here now. So I like to talk about it in the context of this report from IBM, and I really like this because it's agnostic. It's not Microsoft, it's not AvePoint, it's not us, it's IBM. And this is an article that talks about how do you get ROI, how do you get success out of your generative AI initiatives, whether it's Copilot or whether it's Gemini, no matter what it is, right? No matter what Gen AI tool you're using. They identified 6 key pillars, right, that you need to do as an organization to get success out of your AI. So if you're in Viva Amplify and you're asking it a question and it's popping you up with Copilot answers, that's based on generative AI, right? So there are 6 key things to be successful. Vision and strategy, knowing what your vision and mission is for AI and who's responsible for it and who's the governance committee and who's overseeing it. What's your operating model and how are you looking after it? Do you have the right technology and operations? And these are all questions that we're not going to answer today, right? We can't answer everything. But you'll notice a couple that we can answer, right? We've talked about talent and skills, how we upskilling our employees and closing that digital divide and closing that gap and giving them tools and content and resources. And you can talk about Viva Learning and talk about providing them training, culture and adoption. So if we want to see AI adopted well, having those communication channels to promote it, to talk about it, that's something we've talked about a lot already, with things like Viva Connections and Yammer and Engage and some of those connection strategies. But there's one thing we haven't talked about yet, and that's the data, right? And you can see on here, it says, you need core capabilities that are going to simplify, automate, control, and secure your data. And I think we've all been there when Delve or SharePoint Search came out and you search for something and then you get some crazy results from something that shouldn't have been shared, right? AI is search on steroids. So if Microsoft 365 is the engine behind your employee experience, data is the fuel for the engine, for your intelligent personalized recommendations, your decision making, your search, and the relevancy and accuracy of your decisions do come down to your data. So I'm curious here, is this team in your organization, are you responsible for curating and managing the knowledge management? Does that fall under the portal team? Does it fall under the information or the comms team or the records team? I'm interested to know the mix here about, okay, so curating and managing content does fall under the comms team. I do see that a lot with, especially when it comes to intranets, individual business units. Thank you, Kristen, for dropping that in the chat. Anybody else who's familiar with that? Okay, individual business units shared equally. This is good to see. So it's a shared problem. So we have some we have a majority here saying the comms team, but we also have some saying it's shared equally among departments and teams. So with that in mind, a little bit of quick information here. So we actually at AvePoint did our own study. We got together with the Association of Intelligent Information Management and did a very wide, broad survey across over 750 organizations in private and public sector to understand what their state of information management and knowledge management was today. Again, given how pivotal it is to what we're talking about. And we found that while nearly 90% of everyone said, hey, yeah, data quality is important to our success, 75% of executives don't trust their data. So that's a startling thing. We're trying to roll out these co-pilots, roll out these automation and recommendations, and you say, hey, do you trust the data that you've got in your system? And the majority say no, right? The reason that's important, I'm sure you've all seen lots of demos of Copilot, so I won't harp on it too much. And Stephen's going to go through some, and Daniel will have some more examples a little bit later on in ways that you can leverage these kinds of tools. But you're now going to have things plugged into the employee experience. Employees are going to look to these tools to make their life easier. Say, hey, write a 3-page executive summary of AvePoint in financial services, and it will actually generate this information from you, but it's generating it from your content. Right. So if you haven't done a content cleanup in a while, if you don't know what the quality or the relevancy or the accuracy of your content is, that's going to affect your employee experience. If they pull out a memo for their boss and it's using a project that failed 2 years ago, right? It's not a good look. Okay, so strengthening your data quality is super important. And this is one of the things that AvePoint helps our clients with. So we've had a good, strong track record of helping our clients understand what their data landscape looks like, where they're redundant, obsolete, and trivial. And there are sort of some reports you can get out of the box to help you do this with SharePoint. But obviously, one of the things that we like to do is get a really holistic view and break that down by business unit and department and other kinds of insights into how your data is being used. But no matter whether you use AvePoint or something else, we do recommend, taking a good deep look at your data quality. How many, how old is it? How new is it? Is it up to date? And do we need to delete this data, or are we archiving it? Do we need to file it into retention for a while but get it out of the search results? These are some of the considerations with your data quality that if you're responsible for that, to have a look at. But if you're not responsible, definitely employ your IT team to take a look at that as well. Another important aspect is data access, right? And this was a little bet we ran with Dux. Some of you might know Dux, one of my colleagues who lives down the road from me. We made a bet with him about, how many files would you return if you searched our intranet for the word password? You ask Copilot, how many documents do I have access to that have the word password in it? And he thought it was going to be 1 or 2, but then actually you've got quite a lot that came out here. Okay, so again, a key takeaway from this is that Copilot will only return stuff that you have access to. Microsoft takes great pains to stress this, 100% correct. You will only return results from content that you have access to. The trick here is, how do you guarantee what you have access to? Okay, so we've all been in that situation where someone from HR tried to share a payroll summary with one of their colleagues, and instead of clicking share with colleague, they clicked share with everyone. And now that document's just sitting there, technically available to anyone who's looking for it. But now they don't have to go looking for it. If they ask one of these generative AI assistants, it may return these results, right? Especially if they have access and we don't know about it. So the second thing we recommend that you do is run a risk assessment across all of your content to understand where your risky data is. Where have you got stuff that's overshared? Maybe do some, we've got a tool that will do analytics and look at, hey, most of the stuff in this site is not shared with everyone, but these are shared with everyone and they have some personal information in it. So maybe you should lock those down. But generally doing a risk assessment to understand what your security posture looks like before switching it on for the whole org is thoroughly recommended. We actually come with a bunch of compliance and policy templates out of the box to help you enable that in Microsoft 365 and really make sure your Copilot is checked. But one fantastic feature I love is the last minute sanity check, where you go, all right, I want to know if Yale is going to ask a question into Copilot, I want to know what Yale has access to. And you can actually punch in a name or a group and see immediately where they would be returning information from. And you can do a sanity check to say, is that correct? Right? If you have some ethical firewalls in your org, or you've got some areas that you don't want, people shouldn't be returning results from or shouldn't be having access to, you can double check, do they have access to this content or not? And finally, we always recommend doing a data audit is great. Doing a security audit is great, but it's even better if you actually put in some automation to help you enforce and implement the policies going forward so that you're not having to re-audit all the time. Again, another thing that we help with by being able to implement some automation and guardrails around this kind of content. So instead of people just creating a team and going, great, I have a team now, I'm going to load it full of content, you can put a little bit of guardrails around it by saying, oh, what kind of team are you creating and who's the owner? And maybe we'll check in every 6 to 12 months and just double check, say, hey, Stephen, do you still need this team? Is it still relevant to you? Do you want to archive it or do you want to keep it going? By the way, we noticed you shared it with some external people. Does it have secure information in there that you maybe don't want to share? And this is something that we can fully help our customers automate to ensure that after you've done the big cleanup, it actually stays clean going forward. Okay, so let's bring that all together. We covered a lot of ground today, both from some of the employee trends and employee experience and digital workplace trends through to the opportunities we have today, and how we looked at some art of the possible of how a modern, holistic, integrated approach can have such a positive impact on the employee experience. So again, when we're talking about the digital workplace, it's all of the digital applications, tools, and features that we use, and we're trying our best here not to be in silos, right? The more connected that you have, both in terms of employees being able to find and access it, but also in terms of how that the data and the reporting happens on the back end, the better the employee experience is going to be, which is, your digital workplace should be facilitating a great employee experience of your company culture, communications, and learning and well-being. Okay. We like to recommend Microsoft 365 as this platform because we do see the benefits of having it as a comprehensive platform. It doesn't mean you can't be successful today if you haven't got everything in M365, but certainly, think about the tools that you do have and the opportunities that you have to integrate and use them across platform, or whether there's opportunities to extend how you're using either Teams today. I talk to a lot of agencies and organizations that are just using it as a meetings tool, like a Zoom equivalent, and they're missing out on a lot of the collaborative and the content features that are available. So definitely have a think about that and explore some of the employee experience add-ons that are available in Viva. And finally, your knowledge management strategy. And again, this always comes up in intranet and portal discussions, but it's even wider in the digital workplace now. Good data provides the fuel for successful insights, right? It used to be, when we talked about knowledge management, it used to be either about compliance or just saving employees time when searching for stuff, which is a part of the employee experience. But now it's become more critical than ever, knowing that Copilot and generative AI is directly impacted by your data landscape, right? So remember, the Copilots are meant to be there for saving the employees time and helping them out with their tasks. If it's not saving time and not adding value, it's not adding to the employee experience. So making sure that you've got a good knowledge management, information management, data management strategy in place, and that you're enforcing that will help with the other outcomes from recommendations and co-pilots as well. And with that, I think that just about brings us to time. So I'd love to take this opportunity to ask if anyone's got any questions or any thoughts, or just generally love to open the floor for some discussion.
I'll have something to say quick. This is Emily from Assured Information Security. We are a cyber and security company operating out of upstate New York. And we have, I think, just after hearing this, and it was so helpful, I appreciate you taking the time to share everything, but I think we're just not maximizing our use of Microsoft. And currently we're using SharePoint as not only like a collaborative tool and document storage, but that's pretty much like if I write an email newsletter where I'm kind of just posting it on there and sharing it then manually in Outlook. And then I share it in our Mattermost chat, which is a completely separate platform that we use for company-wide chat. And our engineers use that for that because that integrates with GitLab. And there's just a lot of different platforms that we're using at AIS. And I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to consolidate and make things a lot more smooth. So I appreciate everything that you shared.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that feedback. And actually, that's not an uncommon situation, right? Having been in the SharePoint space myself for 20 years, I mean, that's a copy of SharePoint 2001 sitting behind me, right, on the shelf on CD. It's not uncommon that with these platforms, they've got so many features and things that you can do with them. It's not uncommon that organizations just use one primary aspect of it, right? So SharePoint for years was just relegated to a document dump where I store things like a glorified file share, but when actually you could unlock a lot more from productivity, collaboration, integration with other tools and suites, and co-authoring. So yeah, definitely not alone in that, and would love to chat with you more later on about other opportunities. Thanks for that feedback.
Hey, Timothy, can I add something?
Yeah, sure. So you got your hand up.
Yeah, I think, two things, Emily. One thing we saw during the pandemic is a lot of folks getting Teams rolled out to them, but not really being trained how to use it as a collaboration platform. Only about 30 to 40% of customers are actually doing collaboration in Teams. And once they move to that, it really sets things up well. As you start to look at intelligence and things like that, that's going to become really important, because that stuff and the things you're doing in SharePoint, although they'll be found, are not going to be as easy to be seen by Copilot and really bring you what you want. And Timothy made a good point earlier, and it's something I'll talk about in my talk, is the data cleansing, going through. Because think about it this way: if you have 5, 6, 7, 8 years worth of information, and what's interesting is I was reading that 90% of all documents that people use have been are the same documents that have generally been accessed in the last 90 days, which means only 10% of your content are things more than like 3 to 4 months old that you're using. Very, very little. By removing content that is older, more than 5 years old, that really doesn't represent how you talk about your services and offerings and what you're doing, will help you to get more accurate information out. One of the biggest things we see is companies that have really old data. It's referring to things the way that they used to, not currently, doesn't have the current information because people were sending files. There's 9 copies of the same thing or have really old data. So I think both of those are really key as you're moving forward. And we'll talk about the importance of teams, but that's something you may want to think about as you start to look at AI and Viva and all of these tools to really get the most out of it. Easier said than done. Believe me, I know.
Yeah, I'm terrified, but it's a good terrified.
Oh, absolutely. 100%.
Cool. Thank you for that. Yale, keep me honest. Do we have time for one more? Or
We don't really have time for one more, but please send Tim a note in the chat to ask your questions. He'll be back around, and maybe he'll be able to answer it in another in between sessions.
Awesome. Thank you. Sorry, Laurie. Just drop it in the chat. We'll get to it. So want to keep things on time, keep things tight. I'm already a couple minutes over, I see. So Cameron, I'd love to invite Cameron to the stage. Cameron Satterfield from King County. King County, actually, we work with you guys